We are live. Joey, how are you, brother?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Danny. We got the sun shining in New Jersey. We were in the low 70s today. We've turned the corner. It was so nice. I was out in the park today.
Spring. It's spring there, isn't it?
Spring is sprung. Spring has sprung.
Spring has sprung. And I just want to give a shout out to anybody and everybody for joining us once again today. We've got a very special guest. So I'm going to let Joey introduce. And I want to ask anyone who's joining us today, please let us know where you're joining us from. One of the things that Joey and I are both very blessed to have is this ability to connect with people from all over the world. Today's topic is going to be a cracker, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. So please feel free to interact, ask any questions, drop your comments, let us know where you're watching from. And Joey, let's bring Lori on, and I'll let you do the introductions, please. Hey, Lori, how are you?
Hi,
hey,
Joey.
Lori.
Hi, Joey. I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
It's such a pleasure to have you, Lori. And we've only just met like about 30 seconds ago. So it's I was just mentioning as I was introducing the show how lucky we are today. And I hate to say it, but possibly because of the pandemic that we've got this ability to connect with people from all over the world. So I'll hand it over to you, Joey. You're a friend of Lori's.
Yeah, Lori's a dear friend of mine, and she's also known as the Dame. And she'll tell you more about that. And she's the owner of Lori the Dame. She can be reached at lorithedame.com. And she's a sober woman with 31 years of sobriety. She's a certified coach that she's been doing that for 2 decades. And she specializes in the womanly arts and sciences of pleasure and sensuality. And in co-creation with the Dame, women learn how to unleash their wild, sexy, joyful selves through a guided life odyssey practice. A true liberation of love and reclamation of soul is born. Well, that sounds exciting to me. And hopefully we have some ladies out here tonight. And Lori is going to teach you about the zest for how to plug into that life force and, how she lives life to the fullest. So, Lori, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and why you're here and who you help and why. And we'll start off a good conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Joey, for that introduction. Wow. Yeah, I am here. I am definitely present for pleasure. And, that's been my vision. That's been my desire for the past 20 years. And I recognized that because for women, we weren't given that gift to practice pleasure. It's like our mothers didn't set us on their knees and talk to us about the arts and sciences of pleasure and owning all of that. And so I've been in that wonderful pursuit and practice and education for the past 20 years. I ran a school for the womanly arts. It's where I got certified. It's where I worked with thousands of women that were so interested in uncovering true desires and understanding how relevant sensuality is for them in their life as women who want to pursue pleasure as a practice, as a life force, as something that they can create and control. I mean, really, at the end of the day, for me, that's all I can really control is how much pleasure, how much fun, how much serenity, how much sanity, how much sobriety can I pack in to the stream of life.
Well, thank you, Lori. Yeah, go ahead, Danny. You got something to say about that?
Thanks, Joey. Yeah, please let me just jump in for a second and say, Lori, so 31 years in recovery. Awesome. Was that right?
Oh.
So what I'm hearing is like it took you 10 years possibly because you said you've been doing this for 20 years now. So would I be right in saying it kind of took you 10 years to really tap into that extra spirit side of life?
Yes.
It's like getting the most out of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Please
it was like, sorry, I was just going to say, please explain the definition of sensuality for people like myself. Like I kind of get it, but what is it you're talking about?
Well, thank you. I mean, it's for me, I define it just really expanding all of my senses, and I'm not using it, in a sexual way,
Sure.
When I was drinking, I didn't even understand about sexuality or sensuality. I just went to bed with everyone. That's what you do when you get drunk.
Sure.
But when I got sober, I didn't understand that, there was a certain aliveness within my body that wasn't based in shame. And so I had to really uncover that, and I had to heal from that. And I started to enjoy the sensual realm of who I am as a woman, not in a dirty way, not in a way to get somebody or get laid. It was just more in a joyful, enjoying myself and understanding that the various facets of being a woman, of being feminine, because I didn't get that in sobriety. I went to a school for that. I wanted to learn how to become a woman and a powerful woman, and I didn't really feel that. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you for explaining it to me and to anyone else out there that might have been thinking the same thing. Joey?
Yeah, that was beautiful, Lori. Thank you. It's I've had to learn to find pleasure in the simple things. This is kind of interesting, and this might be a mom bought me this ladle that I've been searching for 12 years. I'm super passionate about tools. Like, I'm a craftsman. I built high-end custom furniture for decades, and today I'm super passionate about tools, because tools are how I plug into higher forces, how I heal, how I plug into gratitude, how I help others to start taking tiny steps in the right direction. And there's always a right tool for the job. And, my mom bought me this ladle. It was like a $20 ladle. It was like an Asian thing. She has one. Her mother bought it for her. And I've been searching for this thing for 10 years, on and off. I'll think about it. I'll do something in the kitchen that I need a ladle, and I'm like, I really wish I had that. I want to steal it from my mom. But anyway, when I went over there, I had a birthday recently, and she gave me the ladle, and it was like, I was so overjoyed about this ladle. And every time I use it, I'm just like orgasmic. So it's a simple thing that is a relatively insignificant thing. It certainly doesn't have a price tag to it. That meant so much to me. And I sort of understand. And something about joy and pleasure and gratitude and some of the other gifts about being alive. I could say that when I was, when I first got sober in 2009, that type of stuff felt really uncomfortable for me. It literally made me sick. I couldn't, and I know that there's a deeper meaning to this, and I know a lot of it has to do with, neurologically, and our brains being I was really comfortable at operating at this low frequency, and operating in places of like self-pity and lack and scarcity and self-condemnation. And I lived there for 2 decades. And so when, the clouds started to lift a little bit, and I started to look up and notice, some of the beauty that I was surrounded with, it really made me feel uncomfortable. It produced feelings of anxiety, general uneasiness, stress, guilt, shame, like who I still felt very sick inside, and I definitely didn't hold myself in a high regard. And I felt like, who am I to deserve joy? Like,
Mm.
who am I to have feelings of gratitude? And it took me a long time in taking really small steps to be aware that, hey, my brain and my body was resisting these things, and to keep going and to use that uncomfortableness and those feelings and look at it as a green light to keep walking into it. And over time, I learned to be a little more comfortable with, just laughing and smiling and connecting, having intimate connections with other human beings, letting people in a little bit further past arm's length. And so I think anybody who's watching this show who, went through difficult life circumstances, especially around the area of stress, anxiety, overwhelm, depression, even suicide, addiction recovery, know ahead of time that there's a real good chance when you start to see the light and you start to feel the gift of life that it's going to make you really uncomfortable at first, and to keep going. Lori?
Yeah. Perfect. Because, like our resistance to pleasure, it can be so strong. We can block that. And certainly as a woman, because that's what I am, is 1 in 4 have been sexually assaulted in some way. So our bodies aren't really built to feel, as adults, we don't feel safe. As a woman, I haven't always felt safe. And so my go-to is to reject pleasure. And so I love this whole conversation because it's a practice to receive. It's really a spiritual practice, sensual, sexual. I mean, being someone where, like, my priority in life, everything is spiritual. I have to place my relationship to sensuality, sexuality, all under that heading, so that I can feel healthy and whole and enjoy my entire life and feel really safe. I've worked with so many women who don't feel safe in their body, and they can't experience orgasm. They can't experience, they don't even know that they're not able to connect that because of the wounding.
So Danny, when you first got sober, can you relate at all to the uncomfortableness of, like, feelings of gratitude or experiencing joy or finding some pleasure in the simple things of life? Was that uncomfortable for you at first? What's your experience with that?
Totally, mate. Like what I'm hearing is, and thanks, Laurie, it's like that spiritually connected, eh? That's what I'm hearing. Like when you're spiritually connected, that's when I can start to discover some of the most amazing things. And you just talked about gratitude then, Joey. That's what I'm talking about, that you can get off on life. Well, I do get off on life often. I often get accused of smiling too much and probably at some inappropriate times and laughing at times. But you know what also reminded me of? Intimacy, and I think that's what's at the heart of all of this is this fear of intimacy in those early days. Absolutely. Like you said, Joey, like I used to see people holding hands, right? In my early, say I'm 60 days clean, I see people holding hands, I think, get out of it. Like I used to just say, go away. And then I'd hear people like kissing, what do you say, signs of affection in public. I think, get out of my face, and funny enough, like it took me years to get past that, and that is my shit, from the past. Today, here's another example. I hear someone in recovery, especially having a child, 2 people in recovery having a child. I used to cringe. I used to think, what are you doing? But today I celebrate that stuff. I think it's beautiful. I've got friends who have been married. I've got friends who are having children. I'm friends, my daughter is friends with friends who have got children. It's just the most beautiful thing, and it took me years personally to get connected with that stuff. Maybe it's longer for some and others, you know. Yeah,
Yeah, I'll jump in. It's you said the word intimacy, and
yeah.
Lori said the word intimacy, and I even said the word intimacy, and like
Keep
I
saying.
never knew what that meant,
No,
and I remember when I was sitting down with one of the first people I learned to trust, and I spent a life keeping everybody at arm's length, and and not really truly connecting with anybody, and I guess my defenses were down because I was defeated, and I was crushed, and I had surrendered, and I had connected with a woman who was a therapist and a counselor in one of the institutions that I was in, and she sensed right away that I was blocked, and that I was that I had all these defense mechanisms in place, and that I may not have truly known anything about intimacy. And my first thought, like I thought intimacy meant sex, and she broke it down for me, and she broke the word down on a on a whiteboard, into 3 words, into 4 words, into me, see. And what intimacy is really about. And it hit me because I never really understood, but I knew that I didn't want anybody to see inside of me, to see like what I thought about myself. So it's like letting people see the real me, like taking off my masks, getting vulnerable, allowing people closer, not in a sexual way, but just letting people know who I am. And so like intimacy, when it was broken down in that way, gave me a deeper understanding of what that meant. So into me, see. I still struggle with that today. My go-to, my default thinking is to keep everybody at arm's length and not to trust. And usually people are, instead of innocent until proven guilty, the other way around. And running around on the streets and with dangerous people over the years and being in dangerous situations, that served me really well, but it doesn't serve me anymore. And so I have to catch it, and each and every time I choose to get close to somebody or get vulnerable or let somebody in, it feels like a gigantic leap for me. It feels like a risk. This is 11 plus years later of recovery and doing this. My go-to is to keep everybody just far enough. So that's one of the gifts of recovery, is true intimacy with another human being. Lori?
Absolutely. And it varies, it's really, that's where the sensuality can come in. Did I lose
No,
you?
you're good. You're good.
I've just highlighted you, Laurie. I'm going to talk to you.
Because, there's so many sensual experiences that I can share with my friends, with my male friends. I just got divorced. It's been a year ago, right before COVID. So, it's a whole new world of exploration, of like creating new male relationships where, sometimes we have crushes on each other and we're enjoying each other and we're flirting with each other. And, just especially in this period that deepens our relationship, and it makes our friendship alive, because really when you're flirting, we're just all natural born flirts. And the definition, I think, which I had always thought when I was drinking, is that, you're going to go to bed, you're going to have, that's the cause and the effect. But really flirting is just enjoying myself in the presence of you two right now. And so that I can be present to feel good, like with my puppy, or, but deepening relationships, even on Zoom, has become a very interesting experiment in my life in the past year.
It's crazy the way we've been able to connect, and thank you for that, Laurie. Is it like feeling when we feel good in a conversation, stuff that, because it's beautiful, and I say this all the time, and one of wonderful tools to become more grateful is to pay people a compliment, But when you get that nice feeling in a conversation, and I could identify it as flirting, or maybe it's not, but I feel like underneath flirting, maybe there's just this feel good for both parties. Would that be right?
Oh yeah, it's healthy. It really helps your immunity. I have an article here. I know Joey probably could break it all down for us.
Yep.
But the oxytocin levels rise, and I feel alive and connected, and I love that.
It's been one of the beautiful things in recovery, especially for someone like me. I often say, I came here alone. I was literally locked in a garage or in an institution or a jail for 17 years, isolated from anybody. I thought I hated people, and I was just scared of them, But then when I finally managed to break the ice, and I love how I touched on it took you maybe 10 years to really discover this stuff, Lori. But when I started to discover, the opposite to addiction is connection. And when I started to see the power in intimate relationships, funny enough, with other men, because I could do it with chicks, I could do it with girls. Well, I thought I could anyway. It was just that flirting and that feeling good stuff. But when you can start to build those connections with other human beings and feel good for giving back, that's what I feel like life is often about, And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'll never forget the moment when I was newly married. It was right before I started attending the school. My husband, I was bitching and moaning, complaining, and I was victim-y, And he's like, he just looked at me, like grabbed me. He said, "I cannot be responsible for your happiness." Yeah. And that was just a huge awakening. That I, as a woman, had to learn, I had to train myself to find that inner joy, to find that inner pleasure. No, that I had to be responsible for that nothing outside of me, outside of my relationship with my higher power, which is a huge generator of joy.
I agree.
I can't. I can't depend on other people for that.
Well, they're always going to let us down if we start to depend on other people, aren't they? Like my expectations are pretty high, especially, and if I start to rely on other people, well, it's been my experience that I'm let down. What do you think, Joey?
My experience is that it starts with self, and some people disagree, but I'm a believer that I can't give or receive what I don't have. So, if I'm looking for love, I need to start with self-love. If I'm looking for respect, I need to start with self-respect. If I'm looking for forgiveness, I need to start with self-forgiveness. And, being kind and gentle to myself and learning to love myself and giving myself permission to be human was completely foreign to me. And I needed to start really, really, really small. I needed to practice. For me, the simplest things, the largest, most powerful things in the world, like connection, like intimacy, like love, like forgiveness, like feelings of gratitude, enter through the smallest things. And, a tool that I used, it was two tools. One was really simple, just simply writing each and every day what I had done well that day. And at the end of the day, it was a stretch because I have a brain that only looks at where I fall short, how I'm not enough, like what I'm not doing that I should be doing, like what I've done that is a problem, or like I mentioned earlier, it's like this feeling of lack and not being enough and being other than and being separate. And I started by writing 3 things that I did well every day. And that is a really simple tool that takes 5 minutes that packed a punch immediately. It gave me immediate results. And I could do that every single day. And each and every day, is my life in miniature. So if I'm looking at what I'm doing well, and I'm looking at what I need to be grateful for, I'm plugged into some pretty high forces right there. And I'm engaged in life, and I'm engaged in reality. And, part of being in active addiction is this flight from reality. Like my view of myself, my view of other people and the world in general is skewed. So those are two really big tools. And one of the things that I don't know, I don't remember where I learned it. Nothing I say is original material, by the way. I don't think there is any original material. I think it's all remix in one form or another. But I voraciously study people and why they do what they do. And I'm really interested in I'm committed to never ending self-improvement. So I always looking for strategies and tips and tools to plug into these forces that does for me what I can't do for myself, and fights my lower nature, and I implement in my life, and I experiment with myself. So I'm not sure where I picked it up. I might have read it. I might have listened to it on the podcast. It could have been a stranger in the street or in a meeting, but this person had recognized in me that I had like this deep self-loathing, and recognized the effect when they offered me a compliment, the effect that it had on me. And it wasn't like a giant compliment, but my effect was it was a physical reaction. Like I was repulsed. My head went down. I backed up. My posture, my entire energy changed. I immediately became suspicious of that person. Like this person either like is trying to stroke me for whatever reason, they're crazy, or they want something from me. And this person, I'm pretty sure it was a person now, he said to me, if you're somebody who is used to operating in that state of mind, and you're learning to practice self-love and learning to be gentle with yourself and giving yourself permission to be human, and when someone offers you a compliment, just simply say, thank you for noticing. Thank you for noticing. And like I couldn't even get the words out of my mouth in the beginning, but sure enough, the most powerful things enter through the simplest things. I kept doing that. And when people paid me a compliment, whether it was, hey, you have nice shoes, or you did a really good job, I just started to simply say, thank you for noticing. And it had a massive effect on me right away. Just thought I'd share that.
Thanks, Joey. What do you think, Lori?
Oh, there's so much to think. I think, working with women, I think, let's talk about the tools here. And by the way, Joey, I do want to see your ladle before this show is over.
It's beauty. It's a beauty.
Is this definition of a brag for women. I've worked with so many. And when a woman is taught to brag, which is really a simple definition about owning something that they created that was pleasurable for themselves in the day, whether it's, I have this little oil roller ball that I just got today, and I like to put it on my body, and it feels so good. I brag. I received that today. And, and so when I started to learn about a brag, that I could really, I was taught that that's too much, you're too much, you can't, that's boasting. It's, it's talking about the big freaking fish you caught. It's really just sharing something pleasurable that happened to me today. Like running up and down the hall. I brag. I love to run up and down the hall with my little 6-month-old puppy, and we chase each other. We just can do it forever. But that's been a very empowering tool for women. And then the next thing is definitely self-pleasuring. Because a woman, I didn't know how to self-pleasure soberly. I didn't understand that I had all these this incredible body that would give me 24/7 pleasure. And so I really devoted myself many years to the training of orgasm and extended massive orgasm and working with sexological body workers so that my body could feel levels of pleasure that I never believed existed. And I'm very interested in that for women because, I did a special with 60 Minutes. We produced a special at the school. And the stats are like more than like 60% of women call themselves sexually dysfunctional. That's just because they don't own themselves. They haven't explored, they haven't discovered that intimate level of self-love, Joey, that is available to all of us. So I just wanted to share. Those are my two tools.
Yeah. Thanks, Lori. And I couldn't talk to how much women are able to explore that sexuality stuff, But I know for me, what Joey said, like you talked about that tool you used, Joey, about identifying the things, a daily inventory, isn't it? When one of the tools that I love and one of the tools that I picked up early in my days was this daily inventory. I said to myself, like, what did I do good today and what could I possibly do better tomorrow? When I started to identify that stuff, I found it so helpful for me to be able to move forward. I know you mentioned the HP, the higher power as well, Laurie, and that's such an important thing for me too. And it's not one of those ones that I like to brag. I love that you use that word, but to brag about. But for me, it's probably the most crucial, important relationship I do have because, like I think we said, it's one that's available to me 24/7. And sometimes we can't rely and expect other people to be there for me. But when I can, I think I often said in my earlier days too that when I was prayer, for example, was just me talking to myself. It's like a self-affirmation. When I say my stuff out loud and when I say thank you, it's an acknowledgement to this beautiful life that I have. And sometimes it's shit. It's not always beautiful, but when I continue to identify that stuff regularly, it's kind of like the bad times become okay as well. Like I'm living life to the fullest. And I just want to add as well, we're talking about intimacy. I'm 11 years, 5.5 months clean, right? And I've got no idea still. I'm still a complete amateur at this. I am so good at so many things in recovery, but I am a total novice when it comes to relationships and intimacy. It's still the biggest, and I think for me, it's the last one, and it will be ongoing forever. Yeah. But I certainly haven't even come close to nailing it yet. I'm single because I'm either too picky or whatever the reasons are. I just have not. I'm a horrible person. I can be a horrible person in a relationship, because I've got so much to work on, and intimacy into me, you see, scares the shit out of me. I run off, and I think it's great to acknowledge that stuff. And I know whether you want to acknowledge it, not you personally, but just maybe some of the audience too. It's scary to acknowledge that stuff, but when we acknowledge it, we start to give ourselves a little bit more power over it. Would you say? Sorry, yeah.
I think that's important. In order to change anything, we need to first, be able to identify it and label it, and then accept it. So those are the first steps to change anything, whether it be, a behavior or anything else. And, Lori mentioned the brag, and it made me think of the name of our show, Own Your Gifts, right? Yeah. So it's like, this is really about owning the gift of being being human and being alive. And this is what was typically, really uncomfortable for me. And where I struggle most is asking and receiving. So it's, that's where that's the most uncomfortable thing for me is asking for help and then receiving that help. And, what I found was that, and what I believe and what keeps me, stepping outside of my comfort zone and trying to align with this infinitely giving universe that is always wanting to give to me if I will just get myself out of the way. I think a lot of what we really need to do is all of it's there, all of it's within, all of it's out there in the universe, and higher forces, call it God, call it higher power, whatever it is that you want to call it. It's all there. We just need to remove our blocks that are blocking us from it. It wants to give to us. It's infinitely giving. I just need to get out of the way and stay present. So, I was thinking about when you were talking, Lori, and I know we're running out of time, but I really I'm interested in you discussing with us, what are your first steps when you meet with a client and she or they or them or him comes in and they're blocked and they are filled with guilt and shame and have no idea that they can't give themselves permission to feel pleasure and feel joy, and they're even if they could, they don't know how. What are the first steps to get them moving in the direction of allowing them to ask and receive?
Well, first of all, I always think there's a crack of light in everyone. So in my experience, I look for that light. I look for the light so that we can connect and I can uncover their desires. I'm not interested in finding out what's wrong. I love the rightness. And so I want to create a relationship that's built on how we find the rightness in their desires, because underneath all of that, we have huge appetites. We're lusting and we're loving and we desire and we're insatiable still. Even as addicts, we just want to go higher and higher. So I'm always able to find this thread through so that we can start to play with that. And then there's a lot of exercises that I can co-create with somebody to get into agreement, because agreement is pleasurable control. When we find ourselves right, like Danny, you're like, I'm horrible. I'm a horrible, and we're laughing because we all know it, and we all have that, we all do. It's all true. And the truth is so freeing when we give ourselves permission to just say, how fucked up we are, or how many failures we've had, or you're not
allowed to say that on LinkedIn, Lori. No, I'm kidding. You can say whatever you want.
Okay, all right. But is that making sense? Because when I'm working with a woman, I know there's shame and guilt. I mean, that's automatic. But I want to party with the pleasure and uncover that using the arts and sciences of pleasure so that we can start to open up. And when a woman is open, it's like we own the world. When a woman owns her beauty, her essential, we own the world. That's a place where we can feel beautiful. And there's a lot of little inroads. Wow.
And there's a lot of work too, isn't there, Lori, to get to that point where you can, am I right? For me personally, it took, I often say, put in the hard work, because if we want that, it's like if I want that level of happiness and ecstasy in life, it takes time. If we've come from a background and a history of abuse, physical abuse to myself, I can't just get that overnight. It's a work in progress. And for me personally, it took a couple of years. I love how they say over here in Oz that early recovery is like 5 years. When I heard that, I thought, mad, I've got 5 years before I have to master this, Is that right? Or do you think you can get to it quicker?
I just think I feel like I'm just beginning. I'm 60.
Yeah, good.
with 31 years. I'm like,
Yeah.
just scratching the surface, dude. You know,
Yes.
like there's just so much more to reveal. Eternal vigilance.
I love that. Yes.
That's what I have. I'm like,
It's recovery is
I'm
a
not going
journey, not a destination, isn't it? It's a
No.
journey, isn't it? Forget
no,
about the end. Yes.
no. It's like just every day is a new birth. You know,
Yes.
like, I've known Joey's been my big blessing for the past year. We met in COVID, and
Yeah.
I've just grown to love him so much. And I've had some really tough conversations with him that I had to tell my truth. And that's what my lagging skill is, to tell the truth to a man, because my father was an absent alcoholic,
Sure.
to give voice, to hear, to unmute and not be silent and share my true desires with a man is huge. Big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah, I think what Danny was hitting on, and like I need to know the truth in order to be able to give it a voice, and that's where the hard work comes in. And
Sure.
I something that I hear often, and I'm a firm believer in is there's not a magic bullet. Like certainly, like I've seen and I've had quantum leaps in recovery and in my personal development journey, but really it's lots of really, really, really tiny steps that are compounded over time that add up to a whole lot. But the saying that sticks in my mind when we talk about this is, and again, insert whatever you want here. I for lack of a better term, I'll call it God. But God will move mountains, but you're going to have to bring a shovel. And so shovel's a tool. And I told you what turn me on. And so what we usually like to do at the end of each show is share a tip or a tool or a strategy or an exercise, simple, quick, effective exercise to plug into this life force that we're talking about here. The good stuff that are gifts of us being alive. So do you have a tool you want to share with us, Danny, today?
Mate, it's like I almost forgot about this part of the show, but Joey, and it's like I want to throw something different, but I'm thinking about that process, from the pain, from the obsession, the insanity of the early days, and to getting to like this, we won't say a peak of happiness and gratitude, serenity, spiritual connection, but how do you get there? And I think patience, give time. I know it's so cliche, but if we can just hold on and look for hope, I think it's dream big. I think, yeah, that's it. I'm going to say to dream big, have hope and faith that even though it might seem crazy and it might seem so far away, but dream big and hope and believe that it's going to happen to you, because the more we do that, it's visualization, isn't it? The more we make it happen. Not maybe, it's gonna happen. So yeah, dream big.
I love that. Mine's really simple, and it just came to me, and I had to use it today because I every once in a while, if I'm not hyper vigilant about like my mental and emotional hygiene, and I might, I don't start my day off on the right foot, or I might not be paying as close attention to my recovery as I should have, I'll start to believe the lies that my head tells me. And I was really in the dumps today, and it was a brief amount of time. It was enough. It was a taste where it's where I felt demoralized, and I rarely feel this way. I have a relatively optimistic outlook on life, and I seem to be, really plugged in and thriving at the moment. But it was like I felt defeated, and so what I did is I looked up. I just looked up, and I noticed the blue sky, and I noticed the sun, and it's sometimes you just need to look up. And I'm always like I'm a doer, and I'm always taking action, and I'm always, moving on to the next thing and checking off tasks and taking actions and I'm missing what's going on around me. If I don't slow down long enough to look up, I'm missing life. I'm out of the present moment. Now, these tools and strategies and all this action taking has served me really well, especially when you're stuck and you can't move. But my work is really about today is about trying to stay more in the present moment and to look around. Look around at all the beauty and all the truth and all the goodness in the world that I'm missing because I'm on to the next task. So look up. That's my tip.
Wonderful. Lori, what have you got for us?
That was really cool. This is really cool. I love it. I immediately think of the art of putting exquisite attention on someone else. And just completely focus your attention. And I want to share immense gratitude for the opportunity to have witnessed Joey in the past year quit his job and create the most glorious coaching. He's so amazing. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. It's absolutely been extraordinarily inspiring to bear witness to this magnificent transformation, like of a coach, Joey, that you were born to be. And like in 1 year, what you've accomplished is, I'm just gonna keep putting my attention on you.
On cue, I will say thank you for noticing. It wasn't too long ago where that would make me crawl into a hole, and I appreciate your kind words, Lori, and your love and support, and Danny, we got a good thing going on here, and I really love. You can't ever smile too much because that shit's contagious, and I could always use a little bit more of that. I could be too serious sometimes, so I appreciate the both of you, and it was a great show, and if people are watching and stay tuned for next week for episode 5 of Own Your Gifts. Danny?
I want to speak to you, Danny.
Sorry, what was that, Lori?
I want to call you. I want to speak to you, Danny.
Sure, look, we've got so much to talk about. I want to know how to become better at intimacy and dropping. Oh, yeah, we could go on for days. Lori and Joey, it has been an amazing show. We've had so many people joining us from all over the globe. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to say hello to a few of our viewers, but definitely got people coming in from Illinois, from Vietnam, certainly from Sydney, Jersey. Where are you at, Lori?
I'm a Jersey girl now.
Jersey girl too. And Lisa, hey, for joining us from Darcyville in Sydney also. Mate, we are doing amazing things, and it's so nice to have such a wonderful guest on who can share your experience, especially to help carry the message to some of the women out there. I think it's beautiful what you're doing, Lori, and I think it's beautiful what you're doing too, Joey. And funny enough, one of our tips last week, Lori, that I shared was around acknowledging the wonderful things we see in other people to create happiness, and that's exactly what you just did them for Joey too. Beautiful stuff, guys. Yeah, guys, thank you everyone for watching. We will join you again next. I think this is a good time, Joey? Friday. It's 1 p.m. Friday. I mean, you're talking to the future, Laurie. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's Friday, 2 p.m. right now. So
talking to the future. I love that. Yeah, I think it's a good time. What is it? It would be Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which would be 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and of course 1 p.m. on Friday, over there on the other side of the world in Sydney.
It is.
So I've
already had a couple of meetings with a lady in New York today, and also a lady in Canada. So it's just amazing, this new connection we've got. Yeah. Guys, we better go. I've got another meeting on in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Lori. Please feel free to connect, and let's chat again. Until next week, guys. Thank you.
Joey. Thank you. All right.
Stick around for a sec, Lori. Bye, guys. I'll just end this broadcast.